Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today's video we're going to be talking about flow and what are the best counters to it, because it clearly has infuriated a large portion of people who actually play higher end wars. There have been many threads in forums and it's causing a lot of problems, and especially also this boss in particular, Mojo, because he is extremely tricky opponent to deal with. And so that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Mojo boss, and then we're going to discuss some other solutions, some other ideas that you should explore, and I'm going to switch to my MCOC account in the game, and yeah, we're going to go through some champions and some other tips and tricks that I might pass along. But first and foremost, this Mojo. Now, I had posted already a couple of kills of Mojo with my magic, and magic is still probably the best option for this fight. If not the best, then one of the best for sure. But also today's war, we had a bit of a lead, so I took a liberty to try and explore another option, and it was going fantastic up until a nasty reflex of mine kicked in, and I'll talk about it later. But let's just watch the video. So I brought in my She-Hulk, but before bringing in my She-Hulk, I also took off all of the points in Precision Mastery, because I knew that She-Hulk's crit rate is quite bad, right? And that kind of meant that I'm not going to be triggering flow a lot, and even after I do, so as long as I get to my level 2, I will be able to reverse that power gain he gains from flow. So that was the plan, not to crit a lot, use my passive furies to consistently bait out special attack. And as we can see here, it's working just fine. I'm amping up my furies here, nailing their dashback intercepts, not too bad. He has 3 flow buffs active, but at this point is going to be where I will make a quite bad mistake. Now, I should have slowed down here a bit. I should not have hit him in as much as I did, because now he has 3 stacks of flow active. And I still dropped my level 2 because I knew that I'm going to reverse the power control, but I'm going to make a very bad mistake, and I tried to evade that level 2, but unfortunately I forgot that I took off dexterity. That's a thing that I need to get used to, because that's what I have started doing against Mojo, because that way I do not have this passive buff triggering that will expire and trigger the degens. So the gameplay there was working perfectly up until I just with a reflex tried to avoid at level 2 instead of blocking it, or I could have simply slow played it, should not have thrown my level 2 there and baited out a couple of level 1s, because my furies would keep refreshing, and then I could go back in there and wait out the basically at the power gain from flow. But all in all, I'm like 99% sure that She-Hulk can get that solo in relatively consistently with a tiny bit of practice. So it's quite likely that I will try this again, and I definitely wanted to give She-Hulk also a shout as a possible counter. And another possible counter that I have in mind would be Guillotine 2099, again with Dex off and with her pre-fights active, because then you could just bash it. He would never really reach that level 2. You might end up eating some block damage, which is fine. But Guillotine 2099 with no crits active, but especially with that power drain, could also be a good option for Mojo. I believe could and should work to a decent degree, especially because her damage should be able to ramp up quite consistently and considerably. So those are kind of like my suggestions for Mojo boss at the moment. So it would be magic, She-Hulk, and Guillotine 2099. Problem with magic though is that you kind of really want to have a level 1 start boost, because it is much harder to get to that level 2 afterwards. I did end up finishing that Mojo off with magic, by the way. But when it comes to countering flow in general, obviously you have kind of like, well, you have the generic way how to counter those power gains, and that is parry stun the opponent, or use a champion that just stuns a lot, and that will help you control. But even then, if opponents have like Mystic Dispersion, the time that between the activation of flow and the time you land parry makes the fights more difficult. So obviously you will want some outside help. Now, first and the simplest way how to counter Flow in vast majority of the situations would simply be Quake, because Quake doesn't strike the opponent, she doesn't crit, so you have absolutely nothing to worry about there, and you're gonna be just fine and dandy. The most obvious way how to counter Flow, as we all know, is Power Lock, because Power Gain doesn't quite cut it, because Flow is so potent that even if you end up power draining, I don't know, opponent with Visions level 1, they're still gonna be back up to like level 3 by the time, I don't know, you get another opening. So Power Lock is where you want to focus on, and that obviously takes Magic up in forefront. And Magic would be amazing option for that. And what other power control options we have there? There aren't that many champions who have as good power locks. Obviously Dormammu has a power lock, but Dormammu is much weaker offensively, and yeah, he will not do that well. Dr. Voodoo is potentially a very good option for it with his consistent power drains on level 2s. So even though you might end up critting your opponent somewhat decently, but with Dr. Voodoo's consistent power gain, it should still stop them from launching a level 3. So that is another worthwhile idea. And you also have your Petrify debuffs, which reverses the power control. So that kind of brings you to Void. And especially with Void, if you know how to slow play and hit opponent's block, then you should also be in quite a good position to control opponent's power. And yeah, there are not that many as consistent power gain options, which is also extremely infuriating at times. Now, obviously, the another strategy that you can utilize is simply use champions do not crit. So champions with lower crit rate will be quite useful quite frequently. And in addition to that, we have a couple of champions in game that do not crit at all, like Crossbones, for instance. But Crossbones has the problem of gaining Furies, and if opponent Flow Defender is a Mystic champion that has Mystic Dispersion on, then you will be in a tight situation regardless. But we still have Guillotine 2099, which I believe should now gain some popularity in Alliance Wars, because even though she does need that ramp-up fight, I think overall she would still be a good option to dispatch some bosses and mini-bosses, completely bypassing the Flow node in itself. So Guillotine obviously will be also quite decent of an option. Another thing that I mentioned in my example video was that turning off your Precision Mastery. I know it's annoying, I know it's a pain in the bottom, but that significantly reduces the amount you land your critical hits in. So that will significantly increase your chances of surviving. So that is also one worthwhile strategy that I personally used. It worked quite well. As we saw there, I could manage to relatively easily get to my level 2 by the time Mojo posed any real threat of getting like to 2 or 3 bars of power. So that was definitely super helpful. And just checking your champion crit rates and picking the champions that typically do not crit a lot. Plus, if you turn on the precision, you should buy yourself enough kind of like time to get your game plan going. So those have been my suggestions for Flow and Flow nodes in general. So with all of that being said, the last champion I wanted to mention is Mr. Fantastic. Because Mr. Fantastic also has very potent Petrify effects, and if you do get 3 of his pre-fight Petrifies active, then you will have no problem controlling the fight, because 3 of them combined will completely basically power petrify them like exactly to 100%, so they will not gain any power at all whatsoever. So Mr. Fantastic actually is somebody that I possibly will want to try out as well in these Flow Wars. But yeah, more or less, this is basically where I am at currently. Because as the time goes on, I'm sure we're going to find more counters. Hopefully, we won't have to struggle with Flow too much, and hopefully this is the last season we are struggling with this super fun and interactive global node in an Alliance War. But instead of just being super pissed at Kabam, I might as well try and give my best possible advice I can to help people deal with the problem at hand, whilst obviously I do hope that they will end up changing the flow global and make it more reasonable, either make those power gain passives into buffs or reduce the potency of the power gain or something, because it's currently quite a bit nuts. But yeah, those have once again been my suggestions. I hope at least some of it is something that you guys will appreciate. Obviously there are a couple of obvious things that I did not mention too much, like Indestructible 3 boosts, or bringing in Iceman and eating the level 3s, or whatever you have. But yeah, it's a very tricky time in Alliance War for sure. With Siphon, you could at least kind of avoid it by just not blocking, which was annoying, but it wasn't as bad. And even if you took some extra block damage, you didn't immediately get KO'd. Here, typically the fight ends with you eating special 3 to the face. But yeah, that will pretty much do for today. I hope you guys, once again, find this useful. If you did, then share it with your alliance mates, share it with your friends, share it with whoever else you think might be benefiting from it. And don't forget to hit that like button, it doesn't cost you anything. Hit that sub button if you haven't yet. And all the other good buttons. What else is there left? Notification bell, you can hit the notification bell. But yeah, see you guys.